Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into a fascinating piece of ancient wisdom. We are going to unpack the incredible philosophical depth of Psalm 49. Now this text is roughly 3,000 years old, but honestly, it feels like it could have been written yesterday. We're going to explore its timeless perspective on wealth, human mortality, and what true understanding really looks like. It's an ancient text, sure, but the riddle it presents is something we are still fiercely struggling to figure out right now.
Right out of the gate, the text basically breaks the fourth wall. It calls on every single one of us to stop what we're doing and pay attention. The author demands, "Hear this, all you peoples, both low and high, rich and poor alike." It literally doesn't matter what your earthly status is, how big your bank account is, or where you happen to fall in society's hierarchy. This argument cuts straight across all socioeconomic lines, establishing from word one that this is a message of profound, universal wisdom meant for absolutely everyone.
And how is this heavy message delivered? Well, the author draws on a really rich musical tradition, specifically the prominent guild of ancient temple musicians known as the Sons of Korah. The writer promises to impart understanding by using a harp to explore what they call a riddle. Now, a riddle implies a puzzle, right? A contradiction about the human condition that we need to untangle. By setting this deep philosophical meditation to music, the text is prepping us to look at something that might be a little tough to swallow, making it memorable and really resonant.
So, what exactly is the riddle? It starts with a question we've probably all asked ourselves at some point. Why should I fear when evil days come, when wicked deceivers surround me, those who trust in their wealth and boast of their great riches? Think about how often we see that exact dynamic playing out today. You see people doing wrong, deceiving others, and yet they're the ones constantly flexing their massive wealth. The natural human reaction is to feel anxious, fearful, or honestly, a little envious. The core tension we're solving today is why we shouldn't actually be intimidated by that kind of apparent success.
To untangle this riddle, we have to look at the unpayable ransom. The text systematically dismantles the power of these wealthy deceivers by pointing out the one single thing their money absolutely cannot buy.
The passage declares incredibly clearly that no one can redeem the life of another, and they definitely can't give God a ransom for them. The text argues that the payment for human life is simply way too expensive. Think about that for a second. No matter how astronomically vast a person's riches might be, no amount of hoarded capital can pay a ransom to stop physical decay. Wealth has a hard, impenetrable boundary, and that boundary is human mortality.
Which brings us to a pretty stark number: 0. 0, zilch, nothing. That is the exact number of earthly payments that will ever be enough to guarantee someone lives forever and never sees decay. According to the text, this completely invalidates the ultimate, absolute power of wealth. Look, you can buy comfort, for sure. You can buy influence, you can buy a legacy. But the transaction history ends the very second you face mortality. There is no ultimate buyout clause for a human life.
Because of that hard boundary, death becomes the great equalizer. The text observes that, the wise die, but the foolish and the senseless, they perish in the exact same way. It doesn't matter your intellect, your status, or your brilliant financial strategies. The end result is precisely the same across the board. And what happens to all that carefully guarded wealth? Poof, they leave it to others. The fortunes accumulated by those deceivers who boast of their riches are instantly transferred away from them the literal second their life ends.
It's honestly a tragic irony when you look at the whole progression of a human life through this lens. You have these distinct phases. First, there are the years of pride. People acquire massive wealth, going so far as to name entire lands after themselves, trying to permanently stamp their ego onto the earth. But then comes the final hour, where they inevitably die. And for endless generations after that, the text says they will dwell in tombs as their permanent houses forever. They trade these vast, named estates for a silent, permanent residence in the dirt.
And that brings up this incredibly powerful repeating metaphor from the text. It states plainly, people despite their wealth do not endure. They are like the beasts that perish. That is a profound leveling of the human ego. It's arguing that humans, despite all our material splendor, our fancy named lands, and our complex stock portfolios, we don't physically endure a single second longer than animals do. Without grasping something deeper, our physical fate is totally indistinguishable from the rest of the animal kingdom. But, right about here, the whole narrative pivots. It sets up a stark contrast between two very different spiritual destinies. For those who put all their trust in themselves and their cash, the passage vividly describes them as sheep destined to die, saying that death will be their shepherd. It is a dark, haunting image. But contrasted with that are the upright who prevail in the morning.
The author boldly claims, "But God will redeem me from the realm of the dead. He will surely take me to himself." The argument here is that the unpayable ransom we talked about earlier, it actually is resolved, but by divine redemption, not by wealth.
Meanwhile, for those who just put their faith in their bank accounts, the text highlights this brutal visual irony. It notes that their physical forms will decay in the grave, far from their princely mansions. You can build the most spectacular, sprawling, luxurious mega mansion imaginable above ground, but your final state of decay happens entirely removed from all that comfort down below ground. The mansion stays behind in the light, the individual does not.
So getting back to that original riddle, why shouldn't we be afraid? The final wisdom here is a direct, practical warning. Do not be overawed. Do not be intimidated when others grow rich or when the splendor of their houses increases. The psalmist is basically saying, hey, don't let yourself get envious or anxious or fearful just because someone with zero moral grounding is stacking up cash.
And the text breaks down exactly why we shouldn't be intimidated into 3 harsh realities of earthly splendor. Number 1, they take absolutely nothing with them when they die. The wealth stays right here. Number 2, their splendor, their prestige, their VIP status, none of that descends with them into the grave. And number 3, even if they consider themselves highly blessed while alive, and even if society showers them with praise, and let's be real, society absolutely loves to blindly praise prosperous people, they will ultimately join those who have gone before them who will never again see the light of life. The applause of the world ends abruptly at the grave.
Which leads us right into the haunting final thought of the entire passage. It repeats that earlier metaphor, but adds one absolutely critical condition. People who have wealth but lack understanding are like the beasts that perish. Notice that it's not just the wealth itself that's the problem. It's wealth entirely decoupled from spiritual understanding. Piling up material things without grasping how fragile and temporary life really is, that just reduces human existence to a purely instinctual, animalistic level.
It's a 3,000-year-old riddle, but man, it forces us to look right in the mirror today. In our hyper-modern age, an era completely obsessed with accumulating stuff, flexing our riches, and building our personal brands, are we actually seeking true understanding? Or, when it's all said and done, are we merely just building better tombs? It's something we absolutely have to ask ourselves. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope diving into this ancient text gives you a fresh, solid perspective on the world we live in right now.